All right, it's very good to be here among friends. There were so many sponsors. I think there's as many sponsors as there are people in the audience. So each of you must represent another organization. I've spoken for so many years on this, and I would assume that most of you are the choir. That I don't want to keep going over Occupation 101 each time. So what I'd like to do is sort of take the discussion a step further. I'll touch a little bit on the situation for those that maybe are a few people that are new. But basically, I look at you. I might be wrong, but I look at you as people that are informed about the issue, that are concerned about the issue, that know the basics of the issue, and what I'm concerned about is that we go another step and go from being informed about what's going on to really developing strategies of how do we end the occupation, how do we bring about a just peace. Thanks. And okay, good. Thanks. And also, to strategize in terms of changing policy. ICAD, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, that I head, in some ways, I think we're a little bit unique among Israeli peace organizations. And I don't know about here in the States. I mean, you can make the associations, but often I feel that a lot of the groups that we're a part of, look how many people we are. We're a very small part of the population. I don't know in any society how many people are really critical. To become critical and aware isn't easy in any society. You're not taught to be that way often by your parents. If you're lucky to be born in the right family, maybe you have a head start. The school system certainly doesn't prepare you for being critical. If you're a critical thinker, you flunk. I'm not that I'm so bright, but I was a terrible student in high school and college. So my mother says I'm speaking in all the universities I could never have gotten into. And you don't get critical analysis from the media. Churches, there are some good churches, but overall the churches are a part of the establishment and the synagogues. And in other words, if you're a person that's bright and interested, it isn't easy to really become critical. It's almost by chance. You happen to have a teacher. You happen to know somebody who I was talking today to someone who went to Israel and happened to get to know somebody that took her to Ramallah. And all of a sudden a whole new world opens, but it's serendipitous. Or maybe you hear a speaker somewhere, or you marry somebody that all of a sudden has a whole side you didn't suspect. In other words, for people to become critical in most societies, it's a serendipitous thing. It isn't something that's easy to do. And that's one reason why, I think we're so few. I think this really represents a conscious policy on the parts of states. Governments run school systems, and they run the system. I think it's actually, I wouldn't say a conspiracy, but certainly what governments want is for people to come out of the school system as good citizens and people that'll fit into the workplace. And critical people are very hard to herd. And therefore we tend to be small in numbers. And therefore I think sometimes we feel that we're marginal, that we're powerless, that we're kind of a voice in the wilderness. And so we have our little meetings in churches and so on. But we sometimes don't expect that we're really going to influence policy. That, we're not elected, we don't have power, we don't have masses behind us, we think. And I think that certainly in Israel, that's the feeling among a lot of the activist groups. There are quite a few activist groups, but they all tend to be activist. In other words, the Israeli peace movement is comprised of, it's like a collection of activists. So we're out, I mean, we do a lot of stuff. You know, we're out planting olive trees, and then the next week we're building a house, and the next week we're bringing water down to the Bedouins, and the next week we're protesting the wall. There's a lot of stuff going on, but there's no program, there's no strategy, and I think part of it comes from the fact, actually people have told me this. They said, look, we can't influence policy. You know, why should we fool ourselves? You know, what we can do is protest. You know, we can maybe raise issues to a certain degree. We can be in solidarity with each other, but that's about it. And that I don't accept. And that's where ICAD, I think, has tried to show we think that we can be an actor in this whole thing, in world affairs, that we can, not we individually, but we as an organization with other organizations and with civil society, we can influence policy. And what's heartening for me is, as I travel all over the world, you know, I'm meeting groups like this all over. I mean, in little towns, you know, in places you wouldn't expect. So that what's called, we used to be called the people in the 60s. We called ourselves the people. Today there's even a fancier term. We've graduated. We're now known as the International Civil Society. You know, which has almost become a buzzword. You have civil society conferences and civil society this and that. But someone once called civil society the world's second superpower. Because in fact, we have a lot more clout than we're aware of. You know, because if you multiply this, you know, by thousands of communities and cities around the world, I mean, there's a lot of people. You saw that, you know, in the, I guess last time, most dramatically in all the demonstrations around the world against the invasion of Iraq. And then people kind of got despondent that we didn't stop the invasion of Iraq, and they went back into the woodwork. But you know, you don't always win. But at the same time, you know, we in civil society have quite a few successes under our belts. You know, one of the things I want to do, I mean, I'm just telling you, if anybody has an extra $1 million, I tell you where I'd like to go after this, or in addition to this, I would love to set up a kind of a museum of civil society. I think we're missing that, at least, if not a physical museum, at least a virtual museum on the internet. You know, they have these sites where you can go in and visit the Louvre, the museum, you know, and you go in, they have the virtual Louvre, I think, on the internet. You go into different rooms and you can see the Renaissance paintings and different periods, and then you get a description of the paintings, and you can look, I mean, you really can get a tour. And I'd like to have at least something like that where you could have a kind of a historical tour of civil society.